Now that we have been reminded, we know who the real enemy is. We know how cunning he is. We know his goals. We know his strategy for achieving those goals. But before we begin to charge forward and begin waging war, we need to take a step back and recognize that the enemy has already struck. If you were on the battlefield bleeding to death from shrapnel wounds, you'd want to stop the bleeding before you charge the next enemy bunker. So let's assess the damage and stop the bleeding by talking about the biggest issue in our country: fatherlessness. Over a quarter of all kids in America are growing up fatherless, and those with a dad in the home are oftentimes growing up with an emotionally absent father who is not leading his family spiritually, or maybe even at all. Let's look at the implications of this. With regards to crime, according to the Prison Policy Initiative, $80.7 billion tax dollars were spent on prison expenditures last year. Court costs for criminal cases was in the billions. And 85% of incarcerated individuals are from fatherless homes. Fatherless men are 279% more likely to illegally carry a gun and deal drugs. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, daughters from fatherless homes are 900% more vulnerable to sexual abuse and rape. And fatherless boys are 14 times more likely to become rapists. According to the America First Policy Institute, 90% of all homeless and runaway children, 63% of teen suicides, and 85% of children and teens with behavioral disorders all come from fatherless homes. According to the National Fatherhood Initiative, 71% of school dropouts, 75% of youth that are in chemical abuse centers all come from fatherless homes. Kids who come from fatherless homes are 47% more likely to live in poverty as adults. When you consider the economic costs, the emotional costs, the spiritual costs, and the overall breakdown of society, you can trace all of this, the downfall of America itself, back to the downfall of the American family. This is not just correlation, this is a matter of causation. This is why God has such a profound love and concern for fatherlessness. In His infinite wisdom, He knows how vital fatherhood is to the flourishing of a culture. After all, He is a loving Father Himself, a Father who has adopted us through the shed blood of Jesus Christ. Listen to His heart for the fatherless in these two short verses. Psalm 68:5 says that God in His holy dwelling is a father of the fatherless and a champion of widows. In other words, He's a perfect father who wants to adopt the orphans and the fatherless. But listen to His plan for how He wants to accomplish that. James 1:27 says, "Pure and undefiled religion before God the Father is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained from the world." In that verse, God is mandating His church to rise up and begin to take action. He wants the church to be the ones to make the introduction between Him and the orphan. The church essentially is the adoption agency, so to speak. He puts the responsibility of demonstrating that He is a loving Father who wants to adopt them squarely on His church. Now that we've been educated on the damage that Satan has caused, we can begin to form a battle plan on how to stop the bleeding and take back ground that the enemy has stolen. And let me leave you with this. I grew up fatherless myself. The implications of that led me down a rabbit hole of darkness that was so deep I couldn't get myself out of it. I was one of those statistics. And if it wasn't for God rescuing me, and if it wasn't for good men in the church stepping up and taking me under their wing, there's no doubt that I'd be 6 feet under. So who can you do that for? What kid in your sphere of influence can you take under your wing and make a difference? One kid at a time.
Run. Run to the battle. Put your armor on, draw your sword. Let's run. Run to the battle.